How's it going, and welcome back to Links to the Past, the series where I tell a story from Zelda lore. Previously, we've told the stories of two battles that took place 100 years before Breath of the Wild, as well as Ganon's invasion of Hyrule prior to the Great Flood. Check those out if you want with the playlist link in the top right or description. If you like these kind of videos, be sure to drop a like to show your support, or subscribe if you're new and want to see more Zelda content. Today though, we're looking at one of the darkest periods in Hyrule's history. The day in which Link fell against Ganon, when courage was stamped out by power, which resulted in one of the most horrific wars the kingdom has ever seen, the Imprisoning War. This episode will be covering one of the most important events in the Zelda timeline, so it'll be quite long. I'm going to split this one up into two separate parts. This one today covering the events of the Downfall Timeline's Ocarina of Time, and the next covering the subsequent Imprisoning War. So without further ado, let's go back through Hyrule's history, back to the Downfall Timeline's version of Ocarina of Time's events, leading into A Link to the Past when the hero was defeated. Swallowing his fear, the hero drew his sword. He was no longer the young, happy boy from the forest. In the fires of Ganondorf's hatred, a man was forged, wielding the legendary Master Sword. This man had slain the witch's twin rover, using the mirror shield to reflect their magics back at them. This man had braved the horrors of the Shadow Temple, the torture chamber deep below Kakariko Graveyard that held the secrets of Hyrule's dark history. It had been 7 long years since the King of Thieves, Ganondorf, had manipulated Link into opening the Sacred Realm, and followed him there. The Sacred Realm was the holy dimension in which the Triforce had resided, before Ganondorf had broken in, corrupting the Holy Land into a dark world, and splitting the Triforce into 3 parts. Now Link stood at the peak of Ganon's Dark Tower, face to face with the man that had plunged Hyrule into 7 years of torment and ruin. The man who had cursed and killed Link's father figure, the Great Deku Tree, and laid waste to the kingdom. The man who had taken Zelda prisoner to tear from her the Triforce of Wisdom. The King of Thieves sat at his organ, pouring his madness and his brilliance into the instrument, a chaotic medley filling the great hall around them. The song sang of a lust for power, epic and sad, yet perfectly executed. Above him was the princess, sealed within a prism of dark magic, helpless to defend herself against the Gerudo. As Link drew near to the Warlock, the Triforce of Courage glowed bright from the back of his hand. At the same time, Ganondorf's Triforce of Power and Zelda's Triforce of Wisdom began to resonate in sequence, the 3 parts of the ancient, omnipotent artifact finally reunited, as was Ganondorf's grand plan. As Link approached the king, silence fell around them. It didn't last long, however, broken by the deep baritone of the thief's voice. He spoke to Link and Zelda, the satisfied speech of a man on the cusp of achieving his dreams.
"These toys are too much for you,"
the Gerudo King said.
"I command you return them to me."
Ganondorf threw forth a whirlpool of dark magic, the purple waves of malice forcing Navi and Zelda back, leaving Link alone to face the King of Evil. With booming laughter, Ganondorf slowly raised himself into the air, challenging Link to a final duel for the fate of Hyrule. The fight that ensued was one of the greatest duels in the history of the land. The Dark Lord brought the full force of the Triforce of Power to bear against the hero, who met it with the might of the Light Arrows and the Master Sword. At the top of Ganondorf's Dark Tower, an opulent palace that symbolised everything the thief had worked for, courage and power clashed for the first time since the first hero had fought demise, thousands of years before. Even while facing the purest embodiment of evil, a dark wizard with unimaginable power, Link's courage showed no signs of wavering. Even as his strength began to fail him and the pure power of Ganon began to overwhelm him, the hero fought on, as the fate of his kingdom weighed on his shoulders. But sure enough, at some point, the hero's strength finally failed him, and the Gerudo King spared him no mercy. As Zelda watched from afar, Ganondorf stamped out the final resistance of Hyrule, breaking Link with the power of his wizardry. Throughout Hyrule's history, there have been many dark moments. When Demise reappeared to continue his bloody extermination of the living and to take the Triforce for himself. when Vati turned the king and the princess to stone, corrupting the kingdom and bending Hyrule to his will. But no matter how bleak, there was always a light in the darkness. There was always a hero dressed in green to save Hyrule. But here, the hero had failed. Ganondorf's power proved too much for the hero of time, who was slain atop the Dark Tower. Ganondorf took the Triforce of Courage from his lifeless corpse before throwing the boy in green aside. Zelda was still imprisoned by his power, and Ganondorf took the Triforce of Wisdom from her too, completing what he had yearned for so long, the full Triforce. Ganondorf had won. The gods' chosen hero had failed to stop his scheme, and now Hyrule was his to dominate, with the absolute power of the ancient artifact. With a blood-curdling scream, he brought the full force of the Triforce to bear, his entire body erupting with blinding light. His black armour cracked, and his skin warped and twisted as the monster within him tore its way out. Ganondorf was no more. The man who once was had been engulfed with his desire for power, and the might of the Triforce had bent his shape into a being of pure power, Ganon. Red hair rolled down his back like flames, and colossal horns twisted out from his skull. His power ebbed and flowed in a dark aura around his body, a hulking demon in the shape of a boar. Wielding two great golden swords, Ganon roared, his eyes burning out into the night. Zelda, who had slipped entirely from the mind of the Demon King, was free to watch the birth of the incarnation of evil. The Scourge of Hyrule, a beast who would torment the land for countless ages to come, was born in front of her. With the entire Triforce, the purest embodiment of the power of the goddesses at his command, there was no way to stop it. With Link defeated, Ganon was free to bend the world to his will. Without the Triforce of Wisdom at her hand, Ganon considered the princess no threat. But even without her physical Triforce piece, Zelda still possessed the intellect and cunning of her predecessors. The blood of the goddess Hylia still ran through her veins. Zelda summoned the might of the Seven Sages and called upon their strength. The Sages' plan had been, upon the successful defeat of Ganondorf by Link, to seal the Demon King in a prepared void in the Sacred Realm, a gap in space-time from which he would be unable to escape. But with the full might of the Triforce at his disposal, the Sages didn't have the strength nor the time to seal Ganon in this void. In a plan hatched from desperation, Zelda called upon the other 6 Sages to seal the beast, along with the Triforce, in the Sacred Realm itself, as a final resort. The 7 Sages had no choice. The beast was unstoppable, unyielding, and burned with an unholy malice. With limitless power at his command, there was no alternative but to seal him away, along with the sacred artifact the Sages had tried to protect for so long. They summoned their power and together created a window to the Sacred Realm, through which the beast was pulled by their magic. It took the full might of all 7 Sages, the Princess of Hyrule among them, to force the beast into the alternate dimension and seal off the world from Hyrule, but it was done, and Ganon was trapped. On that dark day, the hero of time himself had fallen to the might of the King of Thieves, and the frantic plan of Princess Zelda had achieved only a temporary victory. Ganon was not defeated, only trapped in the Sacred Realm, but he had with him the full Triforce, and it was only a matter of time before his return. For years following this horrific night, Hyrule enjoyed a temporary peace. A knowledge of the hero's defeat and the sealing of Ganon faded from memory. But within the alternate dimension, the Dark World, Ganon's power began to stir, and that seal that separated the two worlds began to weaken once again, foreboding the return of darkness to Hyrule. In the cruel, cold corruption of the Dark World, the Demon King bided his time, plotting his return. So that was part 1 of a 2-part story telling the tale of the hero's defeat and the beginning of the downfall timeline. Next time we'll look at the imprisoning war in detail, how the seal on the Dark World weakened further, allowing Ganon to break free. If you like this video, drop a like, and if you don't want to miss the next one, be sure to subscribe for more. There are other episodes of Links to the Past in the playlist, which again is in the top right or in the description below. Thank you guys so much for all the support recently, especially just hitting 100,000 subscribers. That's absolutely insane. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.